Daniel always believed their house was too quiet for secrets. He worked late, always sent flowers on her birthdays, never asked where she went when she claimed she needed space. And yet, one Tuesday evening, a single glance through the rain-streaked window cracked his perfect world like cheap porcelain. He came home early. He never came home early, but the train had broken down, and the storm outside turned the walk from the station into a half-hour trudge. When he opened the gate, he saw them. Two silhouettes in the warm yellow spill of the living room lamp. Emily's laugh, soft and careless. A man's shape leaning close enough to brush her hair behind her ear. Daniel didn't open the door. Not right away. He stood under the dripping branches, soaked through, heart pounding in a way he hadn't felt since his father's funeral. He wanted to kick the door down, shout her name, drag the stranger out by his collar, but he didn't. He watched. He counted how long it took them to pull apart when they heard the lock turn. Inside, Emily greeted him with her practiced smile. The man, Mark, she said too quickly, was an old friend. They were just catching up. Mark shook Daniel's hand with that limp, guilty grip, the handshake of a man who thinks he's smarter than the husband he's cuckolding. Daniel said nothing. He smiled. He poured them all a drink. He asked Mark about his work, his family, his hobbies. He memorized every lie they shared with polite laughter and glasses raised. By midnight, Mark was gone. Emily climbed into bed beside Daniel, as if nothing had shifted, but Daniel lay awake long after her breathing evened out. The storm had stopped, but thunder still cracked in his head, and somewhere under the noise, a plan began to form, cold and sharp and patient as a scalpel. 2 weeks passed. Emily acted like nothing had changed. She kissed Daniel goodbye each morning, told him she loved him at night, left faint traces of unfamiliar cologne on her coat. Daniel waited. He watched. He counted. He began coming home early again, not to confront, but to learn. He found where she hid her spare phone, taped behind the top drawer in her vanity. He read the messages she thought would never see daylight. Cheap poetry, hotel addresses, promises about next time and soon when he's away. He didn't smash the phone. He didn't tell her he knew. Instead, he started replying, carefully, just enough to lure Mark closer. He learned his habits, his excuses. He learned that Mark believed Emily would run with him, that she'd take half of everything Daniel built. One night, as Emily slept, Daniel unlocked her laptop. The password was his birthday, a knife in the ribs disguised as sentiment. He copied files she'd hidden in the deep folders, private emails, photos, secret accounts she'd opened under her maiden name. By dawn, he knew enough to end them both, or to make sure they ended each other first. Daniel invited Mark for dinner. Emily tried to object, softly, nervously, but Daniel insisted. "He's an old friend now, isn't he?" he said, his tone so warm it frightened even him. They sat at the table, candlelight flickering between 3 plates. Emily pushed food around, barely eating. Mark tried to laugh, but sweat shone at his temples. Daniel asked him questions about his work, his wife, there wasn't one, his mother, long dead, his debts, many. Mark flinched at every truth Daniel slipped into the conversation like a scalpel point. At dessert, Daniel brought out a single bottle of expensive wine. Emily paled. Mark's hand trembled. They all drank, but Daniel's glass stayed mostly full. He told Mark about a piece of land he was selling. "A perfect investment," he said, leaning forward conspiratorially. He spoke about bank transfers, a new account, a chance for Mark to buy his way out of every mess he'd ever made. By midnight, Mark was nodding like a hungry dog. Emily stared at her plate, her fork unmoving. When Mark left, Daniel kissed his wife goodnight, gentle as always. In the dark, he whispered, "Sleep well. Tomorrow, you'll be free." She didn't know whether it was a promise or a threat. The next day, Mark waited for Daniel at an empty cafe. Daniel arrived late on purpose. Mark's eyes darted around the room, sweat beading at his collar. Daniel laid out the paperwork. Fake, but convincing enough. He watched Mark sign with a greedy flourish, not noticing the hidden clause that tied the signature to a fraud Daniel had carefully arranged to trace back to him alone. At home, Emily found a letter on her pillow, unsigned but unmistakably his hand. "Meet me where you first betrayed me," just one line. she knew where: the hotel. The one she thought Daniel would never discover. When she arrived, she found Mark pacing the cheap hallway, clutching his phone, panicking over new calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Emily tried to calm him, but Mark was already unraveling. Then the police arrived, called by Daniel hours before. Fraud, blackmail, stolen funds. Everything in Mark's name, with Emily conveniently tangled in the middle. No witnesses, no mercy. Mark went down screaming. Emily went down silent, her eyes searching the dark parking lot outside, half expecting Daniel to appear under the flickering street lamp. But Daniel was already at home, pouring himself a drink. He didn't need to watch. He already knew how this ended. Weeks later, the house is quiet again. Emily's side of the closet is empty. Her wedding ring sits on the kitchen counter where she left it, or where Daniel placed it when he returned to the hotel alone, after the police had taken her away. Sometimes neighbors see him on the porch at night, a glass in hand, staring into the dark. They wonder if he misses her, if he regrets what he did. Daniel only smiles when they ask. He tells them what they want to hear, that he's healing, that he forgives, that time mends all wounds. But when the door closes, the smile falls away. He pours another drink. He looks at the ring. He thinks about vows made in churches and broken in cheap hotels. And he feels nothing at all. Outside, the house stands silent, a monument to promises kept far longer than they were ever deserved.